Hello everyone, I am Dr. Manika Gupta. I am an assistant professor at Department of Geology, University of Delhi. Today I will be taking the module on classification of digital image classification, and only two of the techniques of the digital image classification will be dealt in this module, as we have already discussed in the previous module why digital image classification is important. So, by the end of this module, you will be able to understand the two techniques, which are supervised classification and unsupervised classification. Now, why are these two classifications being dealt separately is because these are continuously used and more easily available to everybody. So, there is a separate module on these two techniques. Now, what happens in both of these techniques? Both of these techniques are automated techniques with a difference in variation how are we actually classifying the images. So, why do we need an automated classification? We need an automated classification because if you look at the visual interpretation, it's really important that the analyst or the interpreter has a good knowledge of the satellite data. Even though these two techniques also require the analyst expertise, but they are still computer operated and automated techniques. So these are easily available and you can easily recognize these techniques. So before starting, we will now go on to the supervised image classification. Now if you will look at an image, you notice it's a squared box with lot of pixels on it. You'll get an image like this. Now each of these cells, what does these cells represent? Each of these cells represents an DN value. DN value is your digital number. Now when you get this digital number, it varies between 0 to 255. So you will not know when you look at the image whether this represents water, urban area or any other type of land use, land cover. So what do? We need to classify based on the reflectance whether this is agriculture or whether it may be water. What does it represent? So we need to classify this image so that it can be useful for further end users. How do we do this? Now if you would know that the satellite data has at least 3 to 4 bands data. What happens there? The first to third band represents our visible region of the spectrum, and the fourth band usually represents the NIR or the near infrared band. Now we usually use these 4 bands for image classification, whether it be supervised image classification or unsupervised image classification. Now each of these bands has the same DN number between 0 to 255. Now what happens here? In band 1, suppose this pixel has a value of 91, the same pixel will have a different value in band 2. It may be 25. Similarly, in 3 and 4, they may be around 26 and maybe 100. So, as such, you don't know what these values will represent. So, we combine these values, we analyze these values, and we are able to find what actually is present there. So, as you noticed in the supervised class or in an image, in a digital image, all the bands have values between 0 to 255. Now, how to classify this image on the basis of supervised classification? We actually make a composite of the 3 bands and interpret it visually between the what is present actually in some of the pixels. So, suppose again if I draw here the same image what we previously had, and suppose we know geographically, because it may be area which we know, and we know that this pixel represents water body. So that implies we already know that here it is water is present. But because you feel that this is a small area, but you will have a big area, you want to classify that image. So on the basis of the reflectance of this value, we can actually automatically find out wherever pixels have similar values in all the 4 bands as present for this. So if suppose this has values 91, 26, 25 and 43 in the 4 bands, as you notice, we already know this is a water class and we know the reflectances or the digital number in all the 4 bands. Now, wherever the computer finds these 4 digital numbers in the image, it will classify that as water. It won't classify others as water, but only the pixels which have these values. So this is the simplest manner in which we provide a training site. But in actuality, you don't have one particular value there. You will have a range of values in a particular band which will define a particular class. So if we are talking about water, the reflectance or the digital number might vary between maybe 91 to 100, or it could even go to 120. So whatever be the range, we need to identify that range in the training site. Now how we do that? We go to a field site, we have the GPS values for that location, and we come back, we see in each band where are we getting those reflectances or the digital number, and we can easily make an histogram. So suppose in first band you have the values between 91 to 120. So whatever the pixel locations you have calculated or considered for water, you bring back, you look at the image at that same GPS location, you calculate that value and you create a histogram with frequencies here and your digital number here 0 to 255. So you will get a histogram value. Suppose you have water pixels 10 and the frequency for each of these pixels can be calculated, and we might get something like this. Not in 0 to 255, but this might vary between, suppose this is 91 and this is 120. So you will get something like this of a normalized medium for the water pixel. Now for each of these 4 channels, you will get something like this. So once you have this histogram, you can see where the pixels are lying. But what happens when you are doing this? Sometimes a clear water and a turbid water would have different reflectance in at least one of the channels. Okay. So what can happen? Maybe the first channel represents the same structure as given here, but the second channel might have something kind of a bimodal data. So what does this bimodal data is implying? It's implying that within the same spectral class, we can have 2 subcategories. So the question arises, and it is up to the analyzer whether he wants to keep it as one category or he wants to subclassify. Because if he is not using this channel in the classification technique, then you will not be able to differentiate between these 2 classes, which might represent a clear water and turbid water, and you would actually might be misclassifying that image. So it is important to notice the histograms and not just take the pixel value as such here. Okay. Now what other techniques can be used for this, or we can separate the classes on the basis of the reflectances. This was your first. Your second option is creating a plot for the mean values for the different classes in the same for each of the channels. What do I imply by that? Suppose you have the clear water and the turbid water and you have separate pixels for both of those. What do? Here you have your digital number from 0 to 255, and what would you do here? Suppose it varies between 91 to 100 for one of them. So you will have a plot like this for all the pixels which the range is varying. Now for the turbid water, what would you do? Suppose turbid water reflectance is less and it's varying between 80 to 100. So if this was representing 91 and here you have 80, so here would be the plot for your turbid water. So this is known as your spectral plot. You can easily note that there is an overlapping in one of the channels. So when you classify this image on the basis of this, these images, these pixels won't be classified as separate class, even if you would want to have classified turbid water separately and clear water separately. So the histograms and the contour plot could only tell us that they are overlapping or there could be a subcategory. Now, if we want to classify on the basis of subcategory, we need to identify which of the 4 bands or 2 bands out of the 4 bands would actually be able to separate both these classes. So how do we achieve that? We take the training set which we have and we plot it on a scatter plot. One band value here, suppose band 1, and we have a band 2. So both of the class, maybe in band 1 and band 2 or band 2 or band 3, would provide us with the clusters. These are the pixel values here for one class, and you might get something here for the second class. So you notice that there is a separability of the 2 classes here. So in either of the bands, if we don't get this in band 1 and band 2, we could have the option of choosing band 2 here and band 3 maybe here. So basically we need to have permutation and combinations here and see which 2 bands actually represent the separability of the 2 subclasses. So once we have decided these, we can easily use those bands for the classification of an image. So once we have decided which bands provide us the best combination, we utilize that for our classification of the image. Now, this was how we can determine which bands are useful. Other things need to be important for deciding of the training site is, we need to remember that we first decide how many classes we are requiring to classify an image. Suppose you are classifying for a land use land cover map. So generally we would at least need 3 to 4 classes, but depending on the area you might need even more classes. So suppose as a starting point you start with 3 classes, maybe soil class, vegetation, water, or again the 4th class can be urban area. So these are the 4 classes. Now once we have decided the 4 classes, we need to identify the training sites in each of these 4 classes. So in supervised classification, it becomes important that you know first how many classes you want to classify the image in. Second, you need to identify the pixels or the reflectances value in each of these classes. If you miss any one of these classes, your image will not classify is not being classified in that class. So once you have, how will you get these training sites? One I told was your GPS. Others could be, maybe you consider the aerial photographs, or third you could have higher resolution images also. Suppose you are classifying the image on a MODIS image, so you could have the Landsat data also to understand what is actually the reflectance value of water, and you can pick the reflectances value from there. Now, the limitations for the training site. As you can understand that you need to cover the entire study area even for collecting your sampling sites. So if the sampling data or the training site is not complete, your classification accuracy greatly reduces. So that is your first concern when you are using a supervised classification. Secondly, you need to know about the area. If you don't know about the area, it becomes difficult to classify an image, and you will find it difficult to obtain the training sites. Thirdly, depending how many number of samples you can need actually around minimum of 200 to 250 locations. Maybe starting point could be 50 per site or per land use land cover. So having 50 observations also can be very time consuming and expensive. However, if you are able to have these training sites, it's really a good method of classifying an image, and it helps in an accurate classification of the image. Another important limitation of using the training site is that if you develop a training site on a particular day and you do not classify the image for the same time period, there could be a lot of misclassifications. Now why do I say that there could be misclassifications? So suppose you have a vegetation area and the growth period when you collected the samples, wheat was growing there. Now the image now you have is for April when we have already harvested the wheat. So the reflectance which you get for wheat in December when you plant the wheat and when you harvest the wheat are totally different. So if you say a certain pixel to be wheat, then you have to classify the image for that time period itself. So you have to keep in mind when going for a training site approval or going for the locations, you have to have your classified image from that period only. You cannot have the image from some other season and have the training sites at any other point of time. Secondly, even if you represent a large geographical area for the training site, you cannot imagine to replicate that training site at any other location. Now, why do I say that? The same reason being, because the reflectances are captured by the satellite, when they are being captured, the same thing can reflect in a bit of different band zones. That is why we actually use the mean values and not one particular value in every band data. So what happens if you collect the data at some location and when you apply it to some other location, there could be issues of atmospheric, there could be issues due to lightning effects, or even some ground conditions which can cause the variation in the reflectance for the same field or same vegetation type. So you have to understand that training sites is a very crucial point in supervised classification. Now, once you have the training sites, once you have decided which method to use, which training site represents what, how do we classify the image automatically, or how does the computer work on it? So here the computer uses some statistical phenomena to finally get to the classification of the whole image. So there are three methods here which we will be discussing. The first one is the Euclidean distance method. Now what happens in this? I will be taking a very simple example. I won't be considering all the 4 bands, just with a 2 band space. So again, if you have band 1 and band 2. So what happens here, suppose you have a water class and the reflectance for all the pixels in the water class are present in this zone. Next, this is a water class. And next you have suppose a vegetation class whose reflectances values vary in this location. So this is your vegetation class and this is your water class. Now what happens? We take out the reflectance value of the unidentified pixel and suppose it is somewhere here. Now what do? We calculate the shortest distance of the mean of all this to this point. So suppose this point represents the mean value of this and the triangle here represents the mean value of all these pixels here. Now we calculate the shortest distance between this and shortest distance between this. So whichever distance is shortened, this pixel would be classified into that image or that class. So it can be water. Now suppose we had some factor, some pixel value here. This is one of the pixel which was unidentified and its reflectance values are here. What happens in this? It might belong to this class instead of belonging to this class because this distance might be higher as compared to this distance. So that happens, you can easily notice that even though it's falling in this class, you are actually classifying it as vegetation. So this is known as misclassification of the pixel also. Secondly, this kind of classification tells us that the image or this classification does not consider variation in the pixel reflectances. It's only considering the mean value of these pixels here. So to avoid this, we use the another approach, that is the box classifier. Now what happens in the box classifier? Instead of considering only the mean value, we create a box around these pixels. So in this we get the minimum, maximum, the variance of pixel for the class itself. So this is a box and similarly we have a box here. So now you'll notice that in this classification, this pixel comes within this class and it doesn't go into this vegetation class. So here what is happening, that the variance is being also considered which was not being considered in the Euclidean method. So because we are considering the whole range and we have a box here, this is known as the box classifier or the parallel pipe classification. So we get this. Now you will have to understand that both the classification schemes are good enough, but you have to be careful with these pixels which are on the edges of the distribution system for both the classes. So the same pixel could be classified into different classes just on the basis of what? Just on the basis of the classification scheme we utilized. So you can use either of the schemes, but once you have classified the whole image, you need to have the accuracy assessment of the image and see that if you need to recode these images. How do we do the accuracy assessment will be dealt in our next module. Coming to the third one, that is a maximum likelihood. Now as you can see from the name likelihood, it implies the maximum probability of a particular pixel being in a particular class. So in maximum likelihood, what do? We create again the space, we calculate the mean value of that particular class, and we create a normal distributed system for the band 1 and band 2. So here we have the band 1 and here we have the band 2. So here we have a normal distribution in the feature space for that particular class. Now what happens? Suppose this is your mean value for that class and the ends represents your standard deviation for that class. So this might vary between a difference of standard deviation of 1 to standard deviation of -3, and here it would be around standard deviation of +3. So this is your feature class for your maximum probability. Now suppose you have a suppose now this is your feature space for your pixel, and here is the mean value of one class and this represents a mean value of the second class, and these are your all the pixels of that class and these are the pixel of the second class. Now what happens in probability distribution, we create equal concentric circles covering the pixel space or where all the clusters are present. And for this, suppose we have the classes like this, so we create a concentric circles here and it might go something like this. So for this also, this was for this also we create a unimodal system here and we might have something like this, right? So you have a different mean structure for this class and you have a different mean or normal distribution curve for this class. Once you have these different class and suppose you have a pixel here. So when you have a pixel here, where would you classify this pixel? In class 1 or in class 2? You don't know because it's coming in the equiprobability zone of both the classes. So what we do, we go above and we look where is the likelihood of its occurrence. If its likelihood of occurrence is within the zone of the first curve, we classify it as in the first. If the likelihood of occurrence in the second zone is more, then we classify it in here. So as we see, this is the mean value and this is more coverage here. So that implies the likelihood of occurring of this pixel with this is more as compared to this because it's in the last zone for this graph. So you can see that this method is considered to be more accurate as compared to the previous two methods because we are believing in the maximum probability or high chance of something occurring in the zone. So here if you look at say standard deviation -3, we are actually saying that a pixel is not occurring in this with a chance of 99.7%. So that's a high probability range and we are giving a lot of assurance in defining this. However, this method is highly iterative and it's time consuming method, but still because it's more accurate as compared to the other methods, this method is highly considered while classifying an image using a supervised classification. So as you can see in supervised classification here, we used a training site. So there was a little bit of little bit of expertise was involved of the analyst. However, suppose you go to a geographical area where you do not know anything about that area and you need to classify that image, and it might be some kind of an hilly terrain where you can actually not collect the data. So how do you go about classifying that image? So for classifying that kind of image, you can start with unsupervised classification. So in unsupervised classification, the computer or the software itself identifies the clusters which represent a particular class, and based on that particular classes, we identify or classify the whole image which we have. So how do we do an unsupervised classification? Here also we have two approaches which are commonly used, but since it's a statistical method, there could be a lot of development is undergoing and you could have lot many other methods also. But for the timing, we would concentrate only on two approaches. So the first approach is the nearest neighbor approach. So in nearest neighbor approach, what do we do? Suppose we have an unidentified pixel here and we have 3 identified pixels here belonging to one class, and we have 4 pixels belonging to another class here. So where would we identify this pixel in? So nearest neighbor approach, we need to tell to this system how many k values are we supposed to give. What is a k value? K value is consider nearest pixels, the number of nearest pixels to be considered. Suppose you want to consider only one pixel. So this creates a very noisy classification because one pixel, it can take this, it can take this. So there would be kind of an arbitrary classification in this scheme. So suppose if we take k equal to 3. Now if we take k equal to 3, what happens? An image will be classified through which it has a nearest neighbor of maybe 3 pixels, which are which? One is this, but 2 pixels belong to this class because this are very far away. So to classify this image, when it's considering 3 pixels, 2 pixels are triangle, so this pixel gets classified in a triangle. Now suppose we took k as 5. What happens when we take k as 5? So it considers these 3 pixels, 4, and another shortest might be this one. So again the classification, the maximum majority is for the triangle. So again this pixel is classified in a triangle. Next we might take k as 7. So it's considering all the 7 pixels which are present here. Now this pixel might have been classified as a square and it's no more a triangle. So you can see based on these k values, the classification of a pixel varies. Secondly, you would notice I have only taken the odd numbers here. So why did I not take an even number here? The reason being, they could have been, suppose I would have taken k is equal to 4. So I could have 2 square pixels and 2 triangle pixels nearest to this pixel. So what would be the class? You don't know. So to avoid this kind of a situation, we always treat k values in odd numbers. So this was one way of representing this unsupervised classification of a pixel in a very simplest format. This is done for every pixel by the system, so you can imagine how much time consuming and computer expensive it could be. Now the second approach is what? Second approach is the k-means approach, or you also know it as isodata approach in the NV software. In this approach, what does it do? It creates clusters of the data, which is to be required, and the first is a random cluster. Once it creates random clusters, it keeps on iteratively making these clusters and calculating the mean value. So every pixel it gets, it identifies which class it is supposed to give that pixel to, and then it again recalculates the mean. So after a lot of iterations, you would notice that the mean value doesn't change. So the moment you have a single mean value and it doesn't change with iteration, that is when we say that the image has been classified, and that is the classification we look into. So these were the two techniques which we talked about: supervised classification and unsupervised classification. So classification is not complete without an accuracy assessment. We will be dealing with accuracy assessment in the next module, But to just give an idea of the accuracy assessment, here we have 4 kinds of accuracy which we look into. One is your overall accuracy. What is an overall accuracy? Accuracy where we are just determining that how many pixels are correctly identified and how many pixels were actually need to be classified. So it gives an overall accuracy. It doesn't tell us which class has misclassification or which class was performing the best. So it's just a summarized value. What is the other classification errors? We can have producer accuracy, user accuracy and kappa coefficient. However, this is just that and I am not going to deal with it in this module. If you go on to my next module, you will be able to understand these accuracy assessment a little better. In the end, I would only like to summarize this by saying that in this module we learned about 2 classification techniques that are the hard classifiers, that is supervised classification and unsupervised classification. To summarize, you can understand supervised classification needs training sites which have their own limitations, but it's still much more accurate as compared to unsupervised classification, and the discriminant or the statistical methods employed by the system include 3 techniques which are Euclidean distance, box classifier or a parallel pipe classification, and the third one is the maximum likelihood probability function. Other approach is your unsupervised classification, which usually uses nearest neighbor approach or k-means approach. Both of these are computer assisted and are iteratively very time consuming. But this has an advantage. If you do not know a geographical area as a starting point, you can use this classification. Usually to have an accurate classification, an analyst usually performs an unsupervised classification as well as a supervised classification to see what the difference is and how can you improve the accuracy of the image. Finally, at the end, to talk about the accuracy, we will move on to the next module. Thank you.